Hey guys, what's up? First off, I want to wish all you guys a happy New Year's. I hope you guys are doing better than I am right now because I have a cold from hell. So this video is probably going to take a lot longer for me to make than usual because I'll probably have to edit out a bunch of coughs and sneezing, but never let it be said that I can't be sick and still be looking on point as fuck. Anyway, I made a video recently regarding Caitlyn Jenner, more specifically regarding a problematic thing she said. Most of you already know what this is because a lot of people are angry about it, and in my opinion, rightfully so. Basically, it had to do with passing and how that affects people's comfort levels and things like that, and it was problematic. It didn't have to be taken out of context either. I read the full statement, and the whole thing really implied that we owe it to cisgender society to give a passing appearance, and that's a load of bullshit. Now, most of the people who watch my channel realize by now that I'm an angry person, and I have a very free mouth, and I'm kind of a social justice warrior. And I really don't take kindly to anything that I feel is setting us back in any way, shape, or form. That includes internalized transphobia, which a lot of people get really pissed off about being called out about, or hearing other transgender people being called out about, but I'm sorry, we all have it. I've had it. Society drills it into us. It's up to us to learn to overcome it by educating ourselves. I'd like to think I've done a fairly good job in the past year of kind of alleviating myself of that by educating myself, but honestly, I probably still have a long way to go to, just like all of the rest of us do. I mean, it was just a couple of days ago that I came down a little bit on a couple of my trans friends for not letting me handle a situation with someone who I considered at the time to be a really good friend of mine, but who turned out to be kind of really transphobic and ugly. You know, we'd known each other longer, and so I guess I felt that I owed her some degree of coddling, trying to explain things politely, but in the end, I really didn't. And when I say it came down, I didn't really come down too hard or anything on them. I was just like, guys, you should let me explain this, which I had no right saying or business saying. And obviously I've changed my policy since then, and no one gets a free pass for being transphobic and expecting me to treat them politely about it, so don't worry, I'm over that, but just an example of how, you know, I fuck up this shit too, so I don't think I'm perfect by any means. If anything, I'm probably generally overcompensating for the fact that I actually don't usually feel very highly about myself at all. And yeah, I wasn't extremely the most polite person in my discussion about Caitlyn, but I feel like some people may have taken it a little far. Like I said, I have a pretty free mouth. I speak my mind, and I don't generally give much thought to trying to police my tone or my language. And I may have called her stupid or an idiot once or twice, and I did basically say that she needs to shut up if her foot is not going to stop being, like, magnetically attracted to her mouth. And she definitely needs to really continue educating herself on what is and is not transphobic speech and ideas, and what kind of oppression the rest of the community faces that she's never going to have to deal with because of her class privilege. And I'd like to think that I was kind of clear in addressing this in the first video, but for all intents and purposes, and I'm going to try and state it as clearly as possible, that does not mean by any means that I hate the woman. Most people seem to get that, but like, the folks who haven't have been like a tad really overzealous in jumping my case about it. In a lot of cases they're like even lumping me in with the people who are always like misgendering her intentionally, which by the way is absolutely horrible. And I don't really necessarily feel like I deserve that per se, but it did definitely make me stop back and think a little bit. Now, I'm under no obligation to justify myself to anyone, and I feel like you all know I feel that way by now about most things, and I definitely stand by my opinion. But if there is one thing that really grinds my gears, it's being misconstrued. So some of y'all might want to go back and rewatch that video, because for starters, I never misgendered her or questioned her identity as a transgender woman or her place in our community. And I don't stand for people who do. Questioning the legitimacy of someone's gender identity on the basis of their politics is disgusting and transphobic and wrong. It's incredibly immature too. I don't care how many times she fucks up. If she says she's a woman, as far as we need to be concerned, she's a woman. It's one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen in the community, but it seems to happen so frequently, and even to people who aren't celebrities, and it's really kind of horrifying. I mean, I don't think anyone's under any illusions that we are often in disagreements with each other pretty violently over, like, a lot of different things. And it's really kind of horrible that in a lot of cases it seems like one of the first steps people will go to is to start trying to delegitimize the gender of the person that they don't agree with, which is horrible and ugly and wrong, and we need to stop doing it. We get enough questioning and delegitimization and misgendering from the outside. We don't need it from the inside, too. Now, on that note, since I know it's going to come up, I definitely have had some people who want to justify trying to delegitimize her gender by saying that she apparently wants to detransition. By the way, as far as I can tell after researching everything, those supposed claims are a myth. Last thing I heard, she's still identifying as female and never stopped. Tabloid rags love to take as many things as they possibly can out of as much context as possible because it makes for good title cover stories that sell the magazine. And if you want to stop being lazy about it, you can look up the original quote. It had nothing to do with any actual desire to detransition. It was her using some problematic language, once again, unfortunately, when talking about the difficulties that she never expected to face after coming out. Hey, look, I've been homeless, and I lost, like, pretty much almost everyone I ever knew for the first 27 years of my life, so I can definitely, agree with that sentiment. Things were much easier back when I could pretend that I had cis privilege and male privilege. And I don't think there's a single one of us who hasn't at some point thought to ourselves that it would have just been so much easier. But then we realized that we would have been having to live a life our entire lives and never been happy, so we just kind of had to pick. And in the end, I think, we're all going to end up picking to be true to ourselves. But that doesn't mean that we're never going to regret all the things that we have to lose in order to do so. Anyway, the media took advantage of it, and yes, it hurt the community by making us look like flakes to the people who are basing their expectations for us off of her. But more importantly, that really came back and hurt her too. It's really not her fault that people took advantage of her poor wording, and now it's come back to a point where she's lost a lot of support from a lot of people in the community over it. Really, the blame for that falls a lot more on the media and people who are too lazy to read past the fucking headline that it does on her. Honestly, it really kind of makes me feel bad for her. And that's definitely something I want to tackle a bit further. I don't hate Caitlyn or have any negative views towards her as a person other than that I feel that she sometimes really lacks judgment and common sense. And yeah, she's done some really shitty things that honestly just seem to come along with being a celebrity. And I really would like it if she would be held responsible for those kinds of things, or even better, if she would hold herself responsible for them. But in the end, every celebrity is like that, and if people want to try to spin any of it out of context and use it as like something to set an expectation for the trans community on, as opposed to recognizing that it is something to expect out of celebrities, that person is just stupid. And I don't feel like I need to go down a list. Some of it's pretty bad, but honestly, I don't think any of it has to come down with her necessarily being a bad person, so much as the fact that she's a celebrity and her head is in the fucking clouds. And when it comes down to it, my main concern is just how much potential she has to either really help or really hurt the transgender community. And that's really why I get so angry when it seems like she's doing things that really feel like they're backtracking us, and probably are. She has so much potential to do so much good for the community if she would just, educate herself, get out of La La Land, and get down, with the rest of us and spend some time with less advantaged, less fortunate trans people and advocacy groups to see what it's really like. She needs to learn. She needs to see the realities of transgender life for most of us, and she needs to put her money where her mouth is. Now, obviously, on her own, she cannot help every single trans person in need. But, she could start charity programs and lobby for legislative changes that could make aid for transgender people less necessary. And I really feel like she has the necessary weight to be able to pull in quite a few cisgender celebrities along to that cause, too, which would definitely be helpful. See, that's the thing about privilege. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's all down to what you do with it. You can either deny it or try to justify taking advantage of it, or you can acknowledge it and use it to make positive change for people who lack privilege. And on that note, it's important to me to make sure that I do mention that she has actually since apologized for that statement. And yes, I read the apology. It came across as very sincere and very heartfelt, and as though she, she seems to really realize that she has messed up. She specifically made mention of the fact that she doesn't know what she's talking about a lot of times, and she really does need to educate herself, and she's vowed that she is going to do everything she can to do that. That came as a shock to me, but maybe it shouldn't have, because it really kind of has become quite popular for people to hate on her, hasn't it? And I'm down here in the gutters with everyone else, unfortunately, and the more I think about it, some of y'all have a point. Life is tough on all of us to some degree, I'm sure, even with class privilege. She'll never really know how bad the rest of us have it most of the time, but she still lacks male privilege and cis privilege. And I mean, I don't know how I would keep it together with tabloids and media circuses running rampant in my life. And sure, there are probably things that she could be doing differently that would lessen the impact of that, but at the end of the day, we don't live through her life. We don't know what she's going through and what feelings she's dealing with when she lays down to go to bed at night. Wealth and fame is not a cure for any kind of depression or anything, so why would we think that it would solve all of the problems that come along with being transgender? It's not going to. We live in a cisnormative transphobic society, and she's in the limelight. That has to be difficult. And you know, I hate saying it, but I feel like a lot of the hate fest probably does come from envy. I really hate admitting it, but I have to because when I look at myself, I have to admit that yes, I do envy her on some levels. I would never for a million years want the kind of fame that she has in a trans-hating society, but I have to admit it would be nice if I didn't have to worry about how I was going to pay for my transition. And, you know, I'd like to think that any of the statements I've made that may seem quite a bit rough on her come solely from how stupid and harmful I felt she was being to the public perception of trans people at the given time, but, you know, I'm human, and I'm sure that there are ways that envy probably found its way into my tone when I was saying those things. And yes, I'm definitely still extremely skeptical as far as whether or not she is actually going to really do a quality job of educating herself and making a difference in how she approaches subjects from now on in order to be more helpful and less harmful, but, you know, I have to admit that she did a good job in owning up. It's enough for me to say that I'm willing to put a little bit of faith in her. Alright, so here's the deal. I'm generally not one who apologizes for things very much, generally because I don't really care very much about pleasing people, and I generally feel like I'm right about most things most of the time, just like every other human being on the face of the planet. And I probably also need to keep learning to look outside my own perspective. But here it is. Caitlyn, I'm sorry. You've definitely made some harmful mistakes, but you've also actually accomplished a lot for us this year, even in just giving a single speech. Just the same as I said in my previous video, that, you know, you could stop saying harmful things by just basically making that choice, keep your mouth shut even though the attention is on you. You did not have to come out and say so many things that just move so many people's hearts, and, you know, that first speech was just incredible and there was nothing wrong with it that I could tell. You could have kept your mouth shut back then too, but you didn't, and for my part, I feel like we're better off because of that. I don't know whether or not it really balances out or not with the problematic things that have been said or done since then, but, you know, if you actually do educate yourself and do everything you can to push to your full potential for how much you could change the world for transgender people just on your own, I don't really think it's even going to matter one day that you did and said those problematic things. You know, I can only speak for myself. If the flubs keep happening, I'm probably going to go back to thinking of you as a lost cause as far as being an advocate, but no matter what kind of screw-ups you do or don't make, I will never not support you on a personal level for how much courage it took for you to come out in the spotlight like that, and how difficult it must have been, and how much pain I'm sure you've dealt with waiting for this your entire life pretty much, and how much pain I'm sure you still deal with from having to deal with ugly people on all sides, and from now on, I don't want to be one of them. See, here's the thing, and this is a thing I have felt for a long time with this, and, you know, I fell out of it a little bit, and I've been really kind of afraid to express it, but I'm going to come right out and say it. We can do both of those things at the same time. We can support her while holding her accountable. The two things are not mutually exclusive. We do it for our family and friends all the time, and as much flack as I know I'm about to catch for saying this from people who I have somehow managed to avoid catching flack from previously, she is family just as much as we all are to each other. And sometimes family does stupid things, and sometimes they don't agree, and sometimes they're even Republicans. But at the end of the day, when push comes to shove, we have each other's backs. Doesn't mean we have to agree on everything or anything for that matter, especially politics, and it doesn't mean that you don't get a smack in the head sometimes when you fuck up, but seriously, we have to be in this together, and I'm not always the best at remembering that myself, but that's why I'm owning up too. Now, don't think I'm going soft. I'm a third-wave feminist and a social justice warrior. Some of y'all are still gonna end up on my shit list some of the time if I feel like you're letting any kind of internalized self-hate or transphobia or any kind of tone policing or identity policing get out of hand. But at the end of the day, no matter what I've said to people or what they've said to me, there's not a single person in the transgender community that I would not give the shirt off my back to at the end of the day if they needed it. Because it's not easy for any of us, and we can really disagree on things sometimes, but, you know, we have to face everything together. We are all at risk of so much just for being ourselves, and we all owe each other, you know, the respect of at least being decent to each other. So, Caitlyn, that's my apology to you, and really to the community too. I want to help, and yes, sometimes that means being angry about things and debating things, and honestly when that happens, my filter is probably still going to fly out the window to some degree. But I was probably a little bit meaner than I had to be considering how much I riled up people myself. And I know it probably means nothing. I'm a nobody, and you've got a thick skin, and I'm sure you'll probably never even see either of these videos, and probably wouldn't necessarily care for my opinion or my apology. But just to be right with myself, I have to own up because I know how much I would be hurting hearing ugly things like that said about myself if I fucked up in your position. Honestly, I don't think I could do it. But I have to face the fact that there's a lot of ugliness in the community, and I added to it. I'm sorry guys, that anger needs to be directed outward, not inward. We have issues, but there's no reason that we can't show a little bit more respect to each other than we often do when we're dealing with these issues, and I'm not going to police anyone else's tone, but I can at least do my best to try and treat my trans brothers and sisters the way that I would want them to treat me. Anyway, I guess that really about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, thank you so much to my supporters on patreon.com. Y'all's support is obviously what keeps the channel running. I wouldn't be able to do anything without you guys. And today I especially want to give that shout out to my eyebrow fleek technician, Robin Smoke, as well as my executive director of lip liner, Xavier Lumen. And yes, these are y'all's modeling print shoots, autographed by me and going to be sent in the mail to you shortly. And if any of the rest of you want to get your dirty little mitts on autograph prints from my modeling shoots or other awesome swag, like being able to attend live streams like the one I'll be having tomorrow evening, or even just getting a special shout out with the title in the credits, you can go to patreon.com/DeliaMelody to find out how you can do that. Thank you again, Happy New Year's Eve, and until next time, be yourself.